Hello, good morning, and welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Welcome. It's a Thursday morning, just so you're reminded. I'm Ayo Makinde.
And indeed, it's the 1st of September. Good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
I saw a joke yesterday. And someone says, you guys better be careful the rest of the year, because all the months end with bar.
They end with bar, no slides.
Bar.
I got that one.
I was wondering the person was in the newsroom or something.
Or at the bar, Nigerian Bar Association.
Association.
Or any other bar that may be. So you know.
Okay.
One of the things that we all have to, this is this period that the road safety usually has this Ember Month campaign.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's one way to look at it. Thanks for reminding us. Not that we forgot, but reminding us all the same. That, it's
Taking
September
a cue
1.
from you, by the way.
So, caution is the word.
Yeah.
We travel a lot at this period of the year, towards the end of the year and all. So caution is the word on the part of every one of us. Some of the roads may be a little better now. Some may be still in their old state. So caution is the word on the part of every single one of us, irrespective of where you're going or what you're doing. We can't say that more. We can't say that any less. That's for safety. For security, no less. We all know everything that is happening in the country and efforts government is making as far as they are concerned, but the part that we also have to play, we cannot remonstrate it, and we need to pay attention to our own security as well, irrespective of anything. I just thought that's a good.
Speaking about the road safety, guys, I'd like to see a lot more from them in terms of look. I think it's almost a combination. Because, last time I spoke to the gentleman who is supervising the construction of this Lagos-Ibadan axis, the last bit of the road they say it is. And he complained about indiscipline on the roads, those who go against traffic, and how they'd love to see a lot more discipline. But he listed a number of factors that mitigate against them to some extent doing their jobs and doing it well. One of which was vehicles that break down, in traffic.
Along the way.
So for that one, they were able to get tow trucks. Some of the other items are listed included indiscipline, those who applied that route. So for that particular one, we thought, okay, so if they were able to provide tow trucks for those ones, whatever happens to security agencies who are supposed to enforce the traffic rules, such that they don't see people who flout those rules, because that's a huge one right there. And I stand corrected, we haven't seen a lot of that happening along that construction bit. That's what we're talking about this morning, because if they go out there and do all of that, it will reduce it to a large extent. And if that were the case, it will go a long way in ensuring that perhaps it spreads across board. But probably part of the reasons why they can't do this successfully is because we see government vehicles, we see security agencies, their vehicles who go against that traffic in the name of what? Emergency or whatever it is. But we've also seen and do know that in other places we see that no one is above the law. So if you want citizenry to comply with that law, you have to lead from the front. You have to lead by example. You have to comply with this, but we don't see a lot of those. There's a lot of indiscipline on their part as well, and that feeds into several other people because they're usually frustrated out there on the streets. Not that it's an excuse, but they look for any little thing wherein they flout it. So if that's happening and they can't go in there and pick them up, it's a problem.
Chamberlain, that's my route, so I can say a bit about it. I actually witness security agencies trying to turn back those who are driving against traffic on the Lagos bit of the expressway when you're going back to Ibadan, but those who are driving against traffic are now going to Lagos using that route that early in the morning. The ability to be able to rein in on those driving against traffic speaks to capacity of law enforcement agents, but just how many road safety officials can the FRC afford to deploy at that time of the morning? It also speaks to the need for security agents, to work together. We see a lot of FRC officials on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway trying to manage traffic, but we don't see the same number or the number that can work from the Ogun State Traffic Management agents in the neighboring state. We need to see that coordination so that at least we can have a good number of personnel who are working to drive against traffic. Now I wonder how those who drive against traffic on that highway are able to do it. I can't do it for any amount in the world.
That's you.
I can't do it for any amount in the world. Sometimes my heart is in my mouth when I see an articulated vehicle coming on the right route and a smaller vehicle driving against traffic, and sometimes I'm like, what's going to happen? And then there's some form of diversion, or there's a delay on that route. It begs the question. Nigerians too must learn to obey traffic rules, and then there's a need for security agents to increase the number of persons that are managing traffic on that route. There's no surprise, little wonder that we have high volume of vehicles on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. For crying out loud, we can't say it enough that it's the only route leading outside of Lagos to other parts of the country, and of course the same route that leads into Lagos.
Maybe like the major routes.
Major routes, yeah, because all the others are non-functional, or there's a huge problem of dilapidation with the other routes, such that they can't use them.
Yeah, you talked about personnel. As Chamberlain mentioned, it's the primary responsibility of the Federal Road Safety Commission to ensure road safety. But then you also mentioned Criss, the Ogun State Traffic Management System. But then there is the police. They have a traffic unit. Then there is the Federal Highway Patrol. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, if memory serves me right, is a federal highway. So how frequently those ones operate, I think that's where one of the challenges, would be. Now, the job that the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing is doing on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is one that calls for collaboration of all MDAs that can ensure that proper things are done. The issue that we had to highlight last week about, people spending and wasting man hours was because, as you said, we didn't have enough personnel taking care of things to ensure that people don't line up, and all of that. But there is a critical issue you mentioned, Chamberlain. People who would use their sirens and literally harass or bamboozle people out of the ways.
Yeah.
I remember a government, I don't know which one in particular, was it the Obasanjo government, that said if you are not the president or the governor, you don't use a siren. Has that been reversed? Not to the best of my knowledge. But what we have now, that even bullion vans under the government at that time couldn't use sirens. But now what do we have? Someone carrying an empty ambulance is using his sirens. Policemen who are driving their trucks, pickup trucks, are using sirens. So if, as you said, Chamberlain, the people who are supposed to enforce the laws are breaking the laws, what are you telling the people?
Well, guys, when you speak about capacity of some of this personnel, much as it may be a point, but at the same time, if you go to any of these offices where those who have violated traffic rules are, they attended to, you'll see a pattern. It is vehicles that they know can afford these heavy fines that are usually clamped down on, be it from the VIOs, yes, the state traffic management bodies. Just go to their offices. You will see those vehicles there because they know these vehicles can afford to pay. They don't want trouble. They don't want us to escalate this until they clamp down on those ones. Because just go out there. I know you might have seen it several times. The other vehicles who are nowhere near being roadworthy, they usually look the other way for those kind of vehicles most of the time, which is what we see on a regular basis. So how come they have capacity in that area to pick up the vehicles that can pay? The ones you see, some of the other ones. And so it is what we see. So we had to highlight it. But I guess we had to keep up with some of these things and ensure that they do what they can. Because look, even I think in Lagos, sometimes you see your number plates, if you flout or if you run the lights, sometimes they pick.
No, they will wait for you. You have to.
And in some cases, I think they pick up number plates.
No. When you go to renew your papers, you will be told you are owing 40,000 naira.
There you go.
So if you want to know whether or not,
so that's information.
No, if you want to know whether or not you are owing right now, just go to payvis.ng. Yes, it will tell you key in your vehicle number plate. And you will
do those yellow buses do they drive even with licenses?
We'll have to ask them.
Well, that's information,
right
that Nigerians, Lagosians specifically need to be aware of, so that you try as much as possible not to flout traffic rules.
Well, we'll take a moment and return to you to look at some of the headlines on the dailies today. All right, let's take you through some of the dailies. We'll start with the Guardian newspaper this morning. I won't step down. Ayu speaks as PDP crisis gets messier. Those calling for my resignation are children. Court adjourns Wike's suit against Atiku. Yeah, that's what's here. But I also do remember that when this news broke at the time, there was some denial saying, I really didn't go to court and none of those matters. So now, what's this about? Well, let's hang on. Look at the other riders. I'll just go again down to clarify. It says, court adjourns Wike's suit against Atiku, PDP to September 14. There you go. Obi didn't strike deal with Atiku, says Okukwe. Omokri Adeyanju slammed Tinubu over visit to Jonathan. Tinubu's visit shows no ideological difference on politics, says Farumbi. So that the riders to the big lead they've got here on the front page. And right above that lead story, you see Akeredolu others knock FG over pipeline protection contracts to individuals. Remember the NNPC GM did say it is justified awarding that contract to the individual that they mentioned here. So
is that a covert way of saying, look, let's have private security? Just a question.
Well, look at this as well. Can miss it. Be vigilant. Nigeria sliding into dictatorship. Jonathan warns. So that's the big one on the front page here today. Oh, don't forget the back page. You might like to read it. They've got a guest writer, Mr. Femi Falana, saying why ASU cannot be banned. So that is the Guardian today.
The Vanguard newspaper is saying about the same thing. The lead of the Vanguard newspaper this morning, PDP, Ayu blows hot, says calls on him to quit childish. Interesting. The Riders maintains, I'm not bothered by the noise. Wike's attack on Atiku, PDP deliberate, ascribed to a source. Insists Ayu must resign for peace to reign. Mass exodus from APC evident of imminent collapse. That's ascribed to PDP. No deal between Atiku Obi, ascribed to Okukwe. Find the details on page 5 of the paper this morning. Right under the picture you see on the front page, Kuka, we must be vigilant to save Nigeria's democracy in 2023, says Jonathan. Stories on page 8. And look at the writer says, Northern governors, others celebrate Bishop Cooker at 70. That one you find on page 34 of the paper. Mr. and Mrs. this morning is pointing attention to something very important. Here it is. Mr. says, it's like Mr. is protesting actually. The third bag of rice in 2 months is about to finish. Are there some spirits in this house consuming food at such an alarming speed? And Mrs. calmly responds with a smile. Yes, 2 big spirits created by ASU strike actions. By the look of things, they're going to be here for a long time. The strike is now indefinite. That's the Vanguard newspaper this morning.
Yeah, I like the use of satire of Mr. and Mrs. this morning. Yeah,
no thanks to ASU strike.
Cartoonists should keep at it. All right, from Vanguard newspapers, let's quickly take a look at leadership newspapers, and it's in agreement with the other papers where the big story is concerned, and the writers are just as interesting, as you find very soon. And the lead story goes thus: no end in sight for PDP crisis as Wike Ayu return to trenches. Let's take a look at the writers. Wike or Tom others were kids when we formed PDP. That's according to the national chairman of the PDP. We're going to be hearing some breaking news before the end of the day, I'm sure. Stop being power drunk. Respect constitution on rotation. Wike's loyalists fire back. And lastly, party won't get Rivers votes without reward. There's no end in sight indeed to the PDP crisis. Well, we just might be surprised, you never can tell. You'll find that story on page 4 of the leadership newspapers. Let's take a look at some other stories that may interest you this morning. You'll find above the nameplate, Keyamoto Okowa, President can delegate VP to handle security. You'll find that story on page 13 of leadership newspapers. And one more political story: Lawan, Amechi, others shun APC meeting with Tinubu. What's been happening with the former Minister of Transport in recent times? We haven't heard him say much, particularly with the interesting developments in the APC. It would be nice to have his contribution.
Oh, you say his former Minister of Transport, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chamberlain, I don't understand that, and I choose not to understand it. But that's the leadership newspapers this morning.
So no point explaining that. Well, take a look at New Telegraph next. They also focus on what you see in some of the other dailies here this morning. When we started PDP, these children were not around. Are you? What? Say what? I don't know. Okay, look at the writer. It says he's on 4-year tenure. Atiku's victory not a threat. Atiku Tambuwal, PDP, asks court to dismiss Wike's suit against ex-VP. That's what you see there. And then indefinite strike. ASU out to destroy public varsities, ascribed to Nance. Fiscal transparency, FG disburses 471.9 billion naira to 36 states. That's a big one right there. So that's New Telegraph this morning.
Look at the front page, if you would allow me to segue, of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. It takes a different turn altogether, although it still has that main story. But look at it. High cost of living takes toll on Nigerians. Something that should bother us, actually. Inflation, food prices rise over 4% in 7 months. And there is how to arrest situation ascribed to experts. The details continue on page 4 of the paper this morning. Right under the nameplate are 3 interesting stories. PDP crisis, Ayu slams Wike, says, I won't step down as chair. Next to that one, you find this one. How I resolved ASU strike in 1 day. That's ascribed to former President Jonathan. Perhaps the current president or current government should take a cue. 2023 borrowing plan. FG may drive Nigeria's debt to highest ever. That story you'll find on page 21 of the Daily Trust newspaper today.
And from the Daily Trust newspapers, let's quickly flip to the Nigerian News Direct this morning, and it also leads with that PDP big story, and it's captioned this way: "We will not allow any individual to destabilize PDP," attributed to the national chairman. Lambaste those calling for his sack. Call for Ayu's removal untimely, self-serving. That's attributed to Ajibola. You'll find that story on page 3 of the Nigerian News Direct. As we look above the nameplate, there's some issues in discourse, and the first one at the extreme left goes thus: Nigeria has worst religious crisis in Africa. That's according to the former president, Goodluck Jonathan. Muslim ticket focus should be on need for good governance. And lastly, before we exit the Nigerian News Direct, let's look at some of the stories beneath the big picture, which, by the way, is of the APC presidential flag bearer, Reverend Father Matthew Cooker, I believe, former President Goodluck Jonathan, and the governor of Lagos State. And it should be in felicitation with the bishop on his 70th birthday. But some stories here beneath the picture go this way: oil theft war, minister commissions 8 gunboats in rivers. So many measures deployed, according to the NNPC CEO. The question is, what are the results? And we intend to, of course, explore that topic later on. Also, we'll find $460 billion energy transition plan. Osinbajo leads delegates to seek global support partnership. Of course, the vice president was on his way to the United States early yesterday, and of course, developments would follow shortly afterwards as we get to know the outcomes of his high-profile meetings with other world leaders. That's the Nigerian News Direct this morning.
This Nigeria is the next newspaper, and what do we have on its front page? That's it right there. Nigeria loses 50 trillion naira to violence in 1 year. How much is our budget? It's less than 15
Trillion.
Nigeria loses 50 trillion naira to violence in 1 year. Well, Institute of Economics and Peace damning report says indicts government over wasted 8 trillion naira on security. Do you hear that? Wasted 8 trillion naira. Wow, that's quite damning. But the details of that you will find on page 4 of this Nigeria newspaper today. And right above that one, very quickly, Nigeria's high inflation rate will further depreciate naira, CBN warns. If CBN is warning about this, then who's going to do anything about it? I guess it's the same CBN, but hey, what do I know? Right under that one, you'll find, are you under fire for describing those calling for his resignation children? Well, you said it too early, perhaps. He didn't act as an elder. That's subscribe to Show Me and TJ Yusuf. Find the details of that story on page 5 of the paper this morning. It was quite shocking. Are there children in politics?
Well, I don't know, Ayo. We'll have to find out.
I'm not even
if we get breaking news from Rivers State this morning.
We're already getting breaking news right here.
Some people are bound to be uncomfortable in their chairs when we get that breaking news from Rivers State this morning.
Until then. Lagos reports 4,860 domestic violence, sexual assault cases in 10 months. That is high.
Very high.
In 10 months, I can't do the math. I failed maths when I was in secondary school. I'd have been able to cut down. Okay, wait. Let me do it. It's 10, right? That's about 486 cases per month.
It speaks to the justice system. It speaks to capacity to investigate those cases. It speaks to presence or the absence or the lack of shelters for those who are seeking justice in cases of sexual and gender-based violence. It speaks to a whole lot of issues.
That's quite damning. But that's the this Nigeria newspaper today?
And from this Nigerian newspaper, let's take a very quick look at the Daily Times. The Daily Times also leads with politics. PDP national chairman to critics, I won't resign. And the riders go this way, says those calling for his resignation were kids when PDP was formed. Not my words, it's according to the national chairman of the PDP. Also, there's this rider, Atiku's victory doesn't affect my position. There's a lot more to this story, this developing story, than meets the eye. All right. Also on the front page of the Daily Times, you'll find this one: DSS does not abduct Nigerians. Spokesman. That's attributed to the spokesperson of the DSS. You'll find that story on page 2 if you need clarification as to the exact incident that is trying to clarify. Also, you'll find a reaction to crude oil theft coming from the governor of Ondo State. Pipeline protection. Akeredolu knocks FG for permitting non-state actors to bear arms. That's an interesting way of looking at it.
Okay.
And above the nameplates, there's a reaction to the ASU strike. Of course, we had that yesterday. ASU strike, FG summons vice chancellors, university councils. Look forward to the outcome of that very soon. And lastly, before we exit the Daily Times this morning, right above the ASU story, you'll find this one: Presidency discards Otom's comment on security as false. That's the Daily Times newspapers for you this morning.
And then take a look at Nigerian Tribune next. Those calling for my removal were children when we started PDP. Are you?
How many years ago was PDP formed? 1998, right?
Are you sure? Not 1908?
There will be ancestors by now. Wow.
Okay.
That's 20 years ago.
Oh, look at this.
22.
Atiku's presidential ambition does not affect my position, he says. So, right there. And then, hoodlums. No, just before I go to that one. Okay, well, yeah, above this lead story, you'll get to see hoodlums spelled Kwankwaso with missiles in Kogi. And then you've already seen that one of Akeredolu picking holes in pipeline surveillance contract awarded to Polo. And then ex-generals threaten me, others with CIA. Wiki charges them to deploy their CIA contacts to combat insurgency. Yeah, you heard. So, I guess the political climate, you just get to see so much making the rounds there, and yet more, yet to come. So
well, it's a movie series. We're all here. So
it is, right?
What part are we?
It's a movie series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So there you go. That is it with a look at some of the dailies here this morning. We will be back in a moment. Stay with us.
The Group Chief Executive Officer of the NNPC Limited, Mr. Mile Kyari, has joined the list of guests to anchor the ministerial weekly briefing. He addresses upfront the subject of theft of the nation's crude oil, which has continued to dominate conversations for years. He absolves no one of complicity.
When a fire outbreak happened in one of our pipelines, now we discovered that some of the pipelines are actually connected into individuals' homes. And not only that, and without really, with all sensitivity to our religious beliefs, some of the pipelines and some of the products that we found are actually in churches and in mosques. That means that everybody is involved. There is no way you will take product, bring in trucks in populated neighborhood, load it and leave without everybody else knowing about it. That everybody includes members of the community, members of the religious leadership, and also, and most likely, government officials of all natures, including security agency personnel. They are everywhere.
He agrees that the magnitude of theft and the impact on the nation's economy is undoubtedly substantial, but not up to 200 million barrels per day as reported. A national reserve company will be established to run the pipelines on a commercial basis to contain the menace.
Because of the very unfortunate acts of vandals along our major pipelines, from Atlas Copper all the way to Ibadan, and all the others connecting all the 27 depots that we have across the country, none of them can take delivery of product today. And the reason is very simple. For some of the lines, for instance, from Warri to Bini, we haven't operated line for 15 years. Every molecule of product that you put gets lost.
295 illegal connections, 344 illegal oil reservoirs, 759 metal tanks, 37 trucks, 450 boats, 355 cooking pots, items used by the vandals to carry out the activities, particularly in the Niger Delta region, have also been discovered by security operatives, and these have led to a number of arrests.
I told you there are 122 arrests. They will be named. But definitely the most important thing to do is to prosecute them and show to the world that it's wrong to do this, and that if you do, the law will catch up with them. That is why I said that the EFCC is following the cash.
Responding to questions on the high cost of importation of fuel, the group CEO disclosed that there is the feasibility that Nigeria would halt its importation of petroleum products by mid-2023.
Small modular condensate refineries that were building, if that happens, and we are very optimistic it will happen, you will see that this country will now be a net exporter. As a matter of fact, it will be a hub of export of petroleum product, not just to the West African sub-region, but to the rest of the world. This will happen. The flow of supply will change. By middle of next year, it will change.
The group CEO has also responded to questions about the engagement of ex-Niger Delta militant, popularly known as Tom Polo, explaining that the federal government signed pipeline protection contracts with corporate entities, one of which Tom Polo has interests in order to man the right-of-way and manage members of the community. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
We can assure you that that vessel entered, we told you when it entered, a few minutes to midnight on the 7th, and by around 11 o'clock, 11:45, it moved from its position towards the mooring buoy, where it was suspected it will start picking up product, and 20 minutes later, it reversed and went. Possibly they got information that, the Nigerian Navy vessel is coming and all that. I say possibly because we've not done that investigation. 20 minutes was all the time it stayed within the oil field, that is at the loading point. And of course, 20 minutes is not enough for you to even rig, the loading hoses and hoses and other stuff that you need for that. So it's not possible that it even started, anything called lifting of product. Not at all. It didn't steal nothing. It didn't take anything. You understand? You can't say it took 3 million when I just told you it hasn't taken anything. It lasted just 20 minutes around the mooring buoy, and left because we had information that there is a vessel there. So it didn't take anything. This is the main purpose of this press conference, to reiterate that Nigeria has not lost a single drop of oil as a result of this misadventure by this vessel.
Well, the issues are not just going to go away. They are issues because they need to be dealt with, and we just have to do the needful. Whether or not those losses are happening is not in doubt. One of the things that struck me about this whole conversation we're having is the the difference that was drawn on Newsnight, our program on Monday night, about the difference between oil loss and oil theft. And it's quite striking that would have a situation where there is actually a difference between us losing the oil and the oil being stolen. And we need to give a little more attention to that because excuse me, on the one hand we know we are accruing losses. On the other hand, it is clear that these losses may be as a result of being stolen. That's one. Secondly, the figures that are being bandied, that's another thing altogether. I happened to stumble on a video last night of, by a foreign media house of the Saudi Arabia oil, should I say control center, where they actually describe how they monitor real time everything that is happening along all of their pipelines, onshore and offshore. Every liter, every drop of oil was being monitored. Glad to hear that the GMD also said that it's not something they're making a big deal of right now, but it is something they're also working on. But, the interesting thing here is, so this is happening. Question then is, how do we ensure that we don't fall face flat on the ground in the near or far future about this? This needs to be addressed. This needs to be arrested. The MD of GMD quoted two figures. Said we're probably losing something in the region of 700 barrels per day, but
700 or 700,000?
700,000, thank you, barrels per day. But we said that they can see that at least 200,000 are being stolen. About 200,000 are being stolen. So the figures are very interesting.
And one thing we should do is to take a second look or think again about the position of the Chief of Naval Staff, that the figures are not as high as the NNPC has declared, that there is a difference between oil theft and oil loss. Now, as the Group Managing Director of the NNPC or the CEO of the new NNPC Limited, shouldn't he be in firm control of the figures of crude oil barrels per day being produced in Nigeria and know the difference between oil loss and oil theft? For instance, if we said that Shell has withdrawn declaring force majeure, ENI has withdrawn declaring force majeure, and in recent times Mobil has struck a deal that is not quite the federal government has not quite gone through with that transference of dealings of Mobil. But if we calculated what these companies were producing per day in terms of crude oil production, what's the difference? Shouldn't the boss of the NNPC know all of that? These are the issues that we should interrogate while we discuss crude oil theft in the country. And I wonder now, I'm not saying this categorically, I wonder if the position that the society in its entirety is complicit in crude oil theft is really to deflect on investigative stories coming out in recent times saying that indeed highly placed individuals in government, in the NNPC, are involved to a large extent in the number of crude oil thefts that is going out of this country. Now, the NNPC boss has also said, don't forget, that there is no barrel of crude oil that goes out of this country that is not numbered, and international organizations are aware of this, or their partners who are purchasing. So
if they are numbered, how come we have losses and thefts? Let's not we down. Okay,
there are just several questions to all.
Too many questions.
Too many questions.
Yeah, and sometimes you just don't know where to start really, because some of the narratives out there just don't make sense. I mean, you talked about Saudi how they do their monitoring. And if you just look through, you see the figures that they're posting. For instance, which is what we've highlighted time and again, and we'll keep doing that such that they know that it's a global village. And all of these things are all out there for us to see. We don't have to reinvent the wheel to get certain solutions applied to our own circumstances here. Excuse me. Because Saudi at the time too did say, this was published in August, a couple of weeks ago, because it's just 1st of September today, $48.4 billion, that's record profit that Aramco declared in the second quarter of 2022. This is whilst the Russia, post-COVID, all of those heavy challenges that we say are mitigating against are declaring profit in probably in this realm or recording at least appreciable profit. But here they are declaring all of these profits, and so what excuses can we then give? I know that the previous government were doing something about crude oil theft, and I think former governor of Delta was one of those who was leading it, and they wanted to ensure that we stamp it out. So it's a huge question in terms of what do we do, how do we proceed, how do we ensure that these things don't, because even at a point in time, we couldn't even meet up with our OPEC quota of 2 million barrels per day. So it's a huge challenge, and if we're not meeting up with that, how do we make the requisite
Are we
revenue?
even able to meet up with it now? Because, I mean, going by the figures released by the GMD of, the CEO of the NNPC Limited, I mean, are we ever anywhere near with all of these, figures? But you know what? It's a huge
Because we had the National Economic Council on crude oil theft. We had a council, but it was disbanded. Do you know?
We're talking about pipelines running through
People's homes.
the length and breadth, going through people's homes to Chamberlain, but running across, the length and breadth of the country. If we're deploying the Saudi approach, won't those surveillance also need some form of surveillance? Remember, also, so that we don't start hearing stories yet again, like the Kuje story.
The Chamberlain is right. Is what the GMD of the CEO. That's going to take some getting used to from GMD to CEO. It's going to take a while, but that's part of what he said. It ran through people's homes.
What about the part where
mosques?
he says some of those products are warehoused in churches and mosques?
Churches and mosques. So generally, it will seem like but it's not something new, really. The question is, what are we doing about it? With these, refineries all over the place that he called cooking pots. How come they get crude oil? Did they import their own crude oil?
Look, these things are...
the story, they had legal access to some pipelines. So that's how they're able to draw crude oil.
For me, it's not an excuse. The governor of Rivers State, for instance, went around for whatever reason, call it for the pictures, call it for the camera, whatever it is. He went to some of these areas. We have lost lives and property to these activities. So what are we doing? We have a Minister of Petroleum in the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We have the Minister of State working with him directly about this. So for God's sake, exactly what are we? You often ask that question, Chamberlain. Is this rocket science?
Clearly not. I mean, I remember 2003, 2004, while I covered the pipeline explosion at Mosimi, and you could see it was an industry. Goodness me, I was shocked at what I saw. I saw fabrications that were made by experts. I saw pipes. I saw gallons, dozens of gallons. I saw people who were selling food. This was after the explosion. So even from a layman's perspective, you could see all of those, and you could just literally draw a plan in terms of what was going on. There are people who were looking out, whether security was coming through.
Imagine.
And then if you look through those houses, you see new houses springing up in places that were squalor. And so it's there for everybody to see, really. But I guess it's something that, who knows. Well, we'll take a break, and we're back in a moment. We'll delve into our focus for today. Don't go away.
My problem is INEC. I don't know whether they will do what they say they will do. Because they are making promises now. I don't know whether they will keep to it. If INEC will keep to the promises that they say that Nigeria will get a better election, I'll be so happy. Everybody will see with their eyes. Abuja does not vote. it is the people here that will vote. And then Mr. President said yesterday, he will not interfere. He told the governors he would not interfere, he would not intimidate, but I don't ask. So you know why you interfere now? But thank Mr. President that he wants to leave a legacy of conducting a free and fair election. Some people threaten that, oh, they are former generals, they are close to the CIA in America, they can deal with us. I said, listen, no problem. If you are close to American CIA, why didn't you use it to solve Boko Haram problem? Is it my body you will use it? Nigeria has a serious problem, and you are linked to CIA, you know them, you're a former general. Why not use that contact and solve Nigerians' problem? You want to use it to threaten me, who are you?
Wow, what a scenario playing itself out, as you may have also seen reported in a lot of the dailies this morning. Well, we've got Adakole Ijogi who joins us now. He's a member of the PDP and the political economist. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Goodness, I guess it paused for the party now. You thought that there was going to be that handshake across board with the feuding parties, but they still appear to be firing on all cylinders, which is interpreted in many quarters as throwing spanner in the works. So it does appear as though, did they actually really want this reconciliation to happen, or is it too little, too late moving forward now? With the comments coming through from the chairman of the PDP, Iyochie Ayu.
Good morning, Chamberlain, and thank you for having me. Well, I think what is currently playing out in the People's Democratic Party is, I think, personally, I would describe it as some huge egos, going back and forth, and also some people's inability to manage a huge party with various interests in the PDP. I think it's now becoming personal, because some certain things cannot go out unsaid because they are visible. There are certain things that you can touch, you can see it, you cannot sweet coat them. I mean, you see that. Let me even start by saying this, Chamberlain, that when you look at happenings currently in my dear party, the People's Democratic Party, you will see that some certain quarters within the party are trying to trivialize the issues, trying to say it is between Governor Wike and the national chairman, Senator Iyochie Ayu. I think that those kinds of descriptions are pedestrian. I think they're just trying to trivialize the issues. It is not Governor Wike versus national chairman. I beg to disagree. As someone who is an insider who knows a few things and have been part of this process, it is Governor Wike, it is Governor Ugwani, it is Governor Sheyi Makinde, it is Governor Ikpeazu, it is Governor Otom, it is former Governor Jang, it is former Governor Donald Duke, it is Professor Jerry Gana, it is and a host of other strong party stalwarts who are insisting that certain things should be done rightly to reposition the party so as the party.
Oh dear.
All right, so we'll try and get that back, but he's saying that, well, all those feuding parties, largely there are several interests who he says are insisting on certain things to be done. So, Adakole, when you then say that, the question then is, what are they insisting be done right?
In no mincing words, I would like to say that in order not to flare different camps, the truth is the party is ready to push for certain levels of inclusion with regards to the national office sharing within the party. The national chairman of the party is from the north. The presidential candidate of the party is from the north. The board of trustee chairman is from the north. Even the PDP Governors Forum chairman is from the north. Now, how can you go to an election when the party is skewed towards a particular direction? I mean, it's just simple towards a particular region. It is simple that these leaders of the party are asking these pertinent questions, and they are saying that the People's Democratic Party, very democratic in nature, the People's Democratic Party needs to reposition itself so as to have that, not a sense of inclusion, but actual inclusion of other sections of the country. Now, it is not about Governor Wike, his disagreements after the primaries.
Yeah.
I mean,
just one second, Mr.
as time goes,
if you can hear me, I think it's a lot more than what you're saying now. This is what is playing out at this moment. But it would seem like the crisis within the PDP seems to sustain itself one way or the other, or evolved, itself over time one way or the other. From one issue to the other, to the other, to the other, and always mostly at the national level for a few years now. So the question then would be, perhaps there is a need to understand the power structure within the system. There is a board for the party, there is a national working committee, there is the national, executive council of the party and all of that. So perhaps there is a need to understand what the functions of each of these segments of the party are. Maybe they will be able to say, okay, this is where the error is.
Well, I wish I can answer that question to you in all honesty, but I'm sorry, I just can't. But let me give it a shot. Let me say, yes, the PDP is structured in you have the PDP structured to function very effectively. You have the board of trustees, the national working committee, you have the neck of the party, you have the convention of the party. But you see, one of the things that the People's Democratic Party has, and no other political party in Nigeria has, is that the PDP has an ancestral base. The PDP has evolved over time since 1998. The PDP has a structure within the party that no one candidate or no one person can dominate the affairs of the party. When you have majority of leaders in volume who are in disagreement, who are in dismay with regards to certain processes and certain conditioning within the party, you now have these issues. That is why you see, it seems like the PDP has been having those, like you alluded to, issues within the national level of the party. But I tell you this, that it is actually not a crisis per se. It is just some internal wranglings of the party. The party is still functioning well. I mean, you can see the reception that the party got in Kano State, for instance, with the re-entry of Governor Shekaro. You can see that, and then you can see that the party is out in Osun State, for instance. So the party, it is moving towards the 2023 elections, of course, because of how huge the PDP is and the different interests. What is happening right now is collapsing all those different interests to suit the objective of the party, which is to win election. Now, the PDP is a veteran in winning elections. We won elections in 99, 2003, 2007, 2011. So we know what the people want. We know what will energize the base of the party. Now, when these leaders are in disagreement or they are insisting on certain things to happen, I think if you look at it critically, these leaders are actually saying the right things.
I wish and hope that it was that simple, and that indeed the PDP is going into the 2023 elections with a position of strength. When you talked about the real and true nature of the crisis, well, in your own words, not necessarily crisis, internal wranglings, you mentioned some names, and I want to pick just a few of those names, 3 to be precise. The governor of Abia State, the governor of Benue State, and lastly, the governor of Oyo State. We saw those 3 governors with Governor Wike during those all-important meetings outside the country. Would it be safe to say that amid these wranglings, these are the governors on the side of the governor of Rivers State as these crises continue? And what's the implication of this, just in case the PDP is unable to resolve it as it goes into the 2023 elections?
Let me take the last part of your question first. I think that one of the things I would like to put out there is that the PDP has an internal mechanism within the party to correct such political disagreements. The PDP has this political sophistication that even from when you listen to all of the leaders speak, from Governor Wike to Governor Makinde to Governor Otom or Governor Ugwanya, or even the national chairman of the party, Senator Yuche Ayu, you find out that all of them agree that the PDP has multifaceted style of leadership that no one man can direct or redirect or change the course of the party, because they are all politicians and we are all politicians, and we can understand a few things moving forward. But I tell you this, that when we say in honesty that the party, as it were, is to be repositioned to win elections in 2023, in 2023, sorry, it goes to also buttress the point that the PDP within itself can and has the capacity to mirror the society in Nigeria and say, this is what Nigerians expect from the People's Democratic Party. Nigerians expect thus far, and the PDP should mirror that. Now, when those of us who are engaged in the process of moving Nigeria towards moving the People's Democratic Party towards winning elections, have XYZ to say with regards to that, that is because we have mirrored the society. I mean, the PDP was built on equity, fairness, and justice. It is about inclusion. It's about political participation. It's about fairness. It's about equity. And when you look at the way the party is structured right now, something has to give before we even set up, the Presidential Campaign Council.
All right, so we'll take it from there when we return in just a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Well, Adakole, you say something has to give. Well, many are asking that the chairman, since you also have enumerated the fact that most, if not all, of the key positions are held from persons from the north, so they say the chairman has got to bow and go. Is that what you're saying has to give?
Hello, sorry, Chamberlain, I didn't get that. Please, can you repeat the question?
When you say the chairman, when you say something has to give, and you highlighted how going into an election, all the positions, the key leadership positions of the party cannot be occupied by the North. So, will it be in order then that the chairman steps down? Did you hear me? Well, seems to have lost that connection, but we'll try and get that back. But clearly, you listen to him highlighting how those positions, key positions that are coming from the north, he says, look, it's not good that going into an election, all those key positions are occupied by persons from the north. So something has to give. We're trying to find out what exactly he thinks should give, and can that afford to happen at this point in time in the life of the party? So it is a big question that is out there on the lips of many,
especially members of the party themselves.
Yeah.
And if the intention, the goal is to win the election, there are those who will be wondering, if you can't even organize yourselves, how would you organize the nation? So it's a critical issue to raise, and I hope that the factor, the reality of the case is not lost on the leadership of the party and the members of the party at the various states. So as along the line of the question that we asked Mr. Ijogi, it's not only happening at the federal level, we all know. Just recently, Ebonyi State, or one of these east states in the east, also had such a crisis, at the party chairmanship level. And, every party has their issues from time to time. But if this is going to be resolved, then it has to be done as quickly as possible. You say that campaign starts towards the end of this year, towards the end of this month. So if that is going to happen, then we need to ask ourselves a critical question. If something has to give, what has to give? Now already we've been hearing calls for resignation, and we've heard it clearly from the mouth of the chairman himself. I'm not going to resign. So if something has to give, what has to give?
Okay, let's try. I think it's back now. Adakale, so go ahead and talk to us then. When you say something has to give, are you saying the chairman has got to resign?
Well, in all honesty, there are multiple multiple solutions to this. You have a presidential candidate that is fixed. That is in Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. You now have the BOT chairman that is not fixed, that is flexible, that can leave or stay. You have the national chairman that can leave or stay. So it depends on what the leadership of the party wants. And the leadership of the party, I mean now, not the seemingly diverse groups that you have, the national chairmanship of the party and the candidate on one hand, and then Governor Wike, Professor Jerry Gana, former Governor Jan, former Governor Donald Duke, all these people on one hand. Now, what I'm saying is that they have to agree. They have to agree on what to give. And from what the feelers that we have gotten is that they are requesting that the national chairman paves way for the party, for the chairmanship of the party to move south, for equity, for fairness, for justice, especially as we are going into campaigns. Now, this is not because there have been some internal wrangling or disagreements within some leaders arising from the way the primaries went. No, that's not it. It's just for repositioning the party so as the party can win elections.
Now, it appears you clearly subscribe to that school of thought. So if that were the case, how can the party, will the presidential candidates of the party feel comfortable that the chairman goes when he is getting his mindset ready into an election? Because isn't that going to create more problems for him as a candidate?
No. I don't think so. I think that the national leadership of the party is aware that the People's Democratic Party is not one individual, and it is not the national chairmanship of the party, the national chairman of the party that brought in the candidate of the party. That will be insider trading. It is just a simple process of knowing that the party was built on certain fundamental principles of equity, fairness, justice, inclusion, and that when you look at the way the party is structured, I mean, you have heard it. I don't have to say that the national chairman of the party, Senator Yoche Ayo, promised that he was going to resign if a candidate from of northern Nigerian extraction emerges the party.
Just in case the national, we have seen that the national chairman is saying that he's not going to resign, but there are other conditions that you're saying are possible solutions to the challenge, which is the resignation or the changing of other key positions, i.e. the BOT chairman. But what if these conditions are not satisfactory to the Wike group?
Well, I think the leadership of the party will still also decide. You know, PDP is a democratic party. It's a party of negotiations. It's a party of discussions, of interface, of conversation. And the conversations have been going on. So whatever the national leadership of, but they will come up with it. I mean, we have about 6 to 5 months to the 2023 elections. So I'm positive, I'm hopeful that these issues will be resolved one way or the other. If it's, I mean, the PDP has that sophistication.
But you know, that process has been, just a second, Mr. Ejogi, that process, you know, it would seem has been or is being frustrated as we speak. You know, if this system is so strong and reliable as you have mentioned, one is wondering why it's taking so long. I mean, you've talked about the fact that, you know, the PDP is a family, has systems and everything, so that the system is not able to do it as at this time is something of concern. Now, you've also spoken to the fact that, you know, the campaigns are going to start in earnest, and you are optimistic that things are going to happen. If you would hazard a guess, what kind of permutations would you expect to take place in order at least to get some semblance of justice and equity that can bring everybody together in order to fight this one cause?
Ayo, let me answer your question as a People's Democratic member and as honestly as I can. Personally, I think the way to go is for the presidential candidate of the party, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, to take the bulls by the horn. I personally, as someone coming through the ranks in the party, I think that the leadership that he has shown in this process of reconciliation or, bringing these leaders on board, I think it has not inspired any confidence. I think that Alhaji Atiku Abubakar needs to take the bull by the horn, and he needs to get all these leaders, talk with them. If he needs to placate them,
but that in itself, while it makes a word of sense, and you're not the only one that has said that, one is wondering how come the system that you talked about so eloquently and so proudly of is not able to deal with the issues, and it has to take an individual. Same thing we're trying to run away from, institutions and systems as opposed to individuals taking over issues such as this.
Well, as we speak currently, the presidential candidate of the party assumed the role of the leadership of the party because he's the presidential candidate of the party. Now, when we say he has set up some committees to interface with the different camps, but you see, the reason why I'm saying that it is not producing the expected outcome or the expected result is because when you set up those internal mechanisms to interface, to douse this political brickmanship that you have within the People's Democratic Party, it also needs some backdoor engagement. As a politician, I will tell you, you need some backdoor engagements. Like I was saying, I said, if these people need to be placated, they should be placated. If they need to be apologized, they need to be apologized. If they need to be
as we wind down, I mean, you are in there, you attend several meetings, because some of what we've been told behind the scenes as well is that what we see playing out is not really what it is. When you speak about the presidential candidates, some tell us that, look, that they actually offered the River State governor the position of the vice presidential slot, and he declined. And some also say they approached him about twice or thereabouts, and he said he was not interested. And so when people say that the presidential candidate has not reached out, that it is not exactly the case. Is that right? Uh-oh. Oh, boy. We seem to have the system we lost him at the crucial time. Oh boy! All right, well, we'll just see if we can get that sorted in a couple of seconds, and then we're actually, coincidentally, we're winding down. So, Adakole, did you get the question?
No, sorry, I didn't. I think the whole process just froze.
You were alluding to the fact that the presidential candidate needed to take the bull by the horn, and there are those who believe that, look, that the candidate, has actually reached out before now to the River State governor, offering him the VP slot way before now, and he declined. And so when people keep saying some of these things, making it look as though he hadn't reached out or he's not, or he's aloof, that is exactly not the case. Is that true?
Well, I think it's the two parties that are involved can answer that with all honesty. I'm not privy to that information, whether the candidate offered the VP slot or the Governor Wike declined or accepted that. But what I can say right now is that Governor Wike, Nyesom Wike, Governor Ugwuanyi, Governor Seyi Makinde, Governor Ikpeazu, Governor Otom, Professor Jerry Gana, former Governor Jang, former Governor Donald Duke, former Governor Mimiko, these people in this camp are not leaving the People's Democratic Party. They will stay within the party, and I promise you, these whole issues will be resolved. It looks a little bit difficult because some people are speaking out in the media and taking very strong stands. But I tell you, we are all politicians. We don't take strong stance. We look at what will benefit the party and what will allow the party be acceptable in certain regions, and also what will make the party to win elections.
So, with the comments coming through from the chairman calling certain persons children, Does that fit into what you just described?
Well, there have been banters going from the national chairman to the Governor Wike himself to Governor Otong. There have been banters left, right, and center because emotions are flaring up. But I tell you this: at the end of the day, they will still hug and kiss and make up.
All right.
It's just a process.
Well, so there you go. You've just, if our understanding is right, we shouldn't hold our breath for politicians. They know how to sort themselves out behind the scenes. Well, thank you very much indeed, Dadakole Ijogi, for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, back in a moment, everyone. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Demola Abbas is a professor of international law and global affairs expert. He joins us this morning to weigh in on some of the scenes or scenarios playing themselves out in the polity. Good morning, Prof. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, the president a couple of days ago did say when he met with governors from his party that he likes votes to count. He wants a free and fair elections. He's not going to influence anything. And as such, perhaps they should internalize that as much as they can. Now, having said that to them, of course, they run with it to whatever extent. How should we, the people, internalize that?
Well, thank you very much once again. Well, it's a very interesting comment. I mean, to put it in the words of the president, he said he will allow people to vote for who they want. And on the one hand, it's very reassuring for the government to say that, for the president to say that. But on the other hand, it's very worrisome too. Because you begin to ask yourself, does that mean that A, they've not been allowing people's votes to count in the past? Or number two, that the president has to allow, that is exact word, I'm not using, that's what he said, that he will allow people's vote to count. As if it is not people's right for them to vote for who they want to vote to. I think we've got to this level of very terrible mediocrity in Nigeria in our political life, that it will take the president to assure the nation that I will not interfere with the election. I won't allow people, and to again to quote him, he said, I am not going to allow Nigerians to be humiliated and intimidated by people's personal resources and people who are in position of power. Again, you begin to wonder. That is before we even begin to, because we have to know what we are internalizing as a citizen. You begin to wonder, okay, you don't want Nigeria to be humiliated. We're already humiliated anyway, to be honest with you. You don't say you don't want Nigerians to be humiliated by simply allowing them to be voted for. You already humiliate Nigerians by not even making the process fair enough for them to put people through that they could actually vote for. Because by the time you say you are guaranteed their vote to count, it's already a fait accompli. Let me give you an example. We are in a situation in which humongous amount of money is required for people to pick nomination forms. So you already technically disenfranchise people at that level. So whoever they are voting for at the election might not be the person they actually wanted. So, and this is not a very theoretical thing. But all that be the case, at least we are assured that at least the government will not, or by the word of the president, will not sit by when the police, the military, whatever apparatchik of the state they've been using in the past to intimidate people will run amok.
Well, perhaps that speaks to a need to dig into the past or some historical antecedents to that statement. I will not allow, to, as you quote the president as saying. Where could that have come from? This is our fourth republic. Okay, this is the longest republic we've had ever. So where could that statement have come from?
Well, that's a very important question, Ayo, because if you go back to the First Republic in the 60s, we woke up suddenly one day and we found the premier of a region saying that no matter what you do, we will win this election. That even if you don't vote for us, stones will vote for us. In other words, it began long ago when people in power began to assert very criminal things in our body politic to make it clear to the citizenry that we are just going to the poll just to fulfill our righteousness. We don't really care about your vote. Look, to put it in the words of one of the oldies of those days, I'm talking about SLA Akintola, that the Yorubas would call SLA Akintola in those days. He said, Atiko Jebolo Shalowo Okubaba and Etiobo. In other words, we've put the ring in the finger of, the whatever. Let's see who's going to remove it. In other words, I am in power. Let me see who's going to remove me. It was a utmost disregard for the political process. So
as far back as the First Republic.
60s. I'm not even going back to the 50s, the Constitutional Conference and this and that, in which a lot of things were done. But I'm just limiting to when we even got independence. And we began to govern ourselves. And fast forward to 1979. I don't want to go into the charade that was by Shagari's administration, the legendary, vote buying. And vote buying started long before Shagari administration, make no mistake, in different format, albeit. So, if you want to go back into that story, well, you will say yes, the President Muhammadu Buhari was being historical by saying that. He was reflecting on what was going on, but that what was going on also affected his own government, the one that brought him to power. Because for you to say you will not allow it, actually got me very, very worried. But I don't want to spend too much time.
If we dug into our yet again very recent past, you recall when the president was congratulating the flag bearer of the party, he said he was confident he was going to hand over to him. Is there a change somewhere along the mix, perhaps in the realization that the president is not returning? He has elapsed his tenure, and as such, he's now saying that, look, allow the process, to take its course. And then can we also wait, with the recent off-cycle elections in Osun and Ekiti?
Well, thank you very much. I think that's a very important question. Look, I absolutely hate to second-guess politicians. I don't think it would be a lifetime job for somebody to second-guess the best of politicians in the world. Then it would take an eternity to second-guess a Nigerian politician, basically. Because at the moment they say, I will not, I am reading I will. They like to deny what they want to do. They start with denying. So I think it's become their kind of strategy. But look, there are so many rumors about Buhari's body language. When you don't speak, people look at your body language. And Buhari is not the one that speaks a lot anyway. I don't know why anybody can even read his body language. About his body language, who he supported during the primaries and all this stuff, back and forth. I just took myself out of it. But what was important, that eventually somebody emerged from that party. Whether the presidency supported him or not, I don't care. But at least through whatever system we have now, no matter how defective, somebody
has emerged.
So it behoves on the president and the rest of the party, obviously, to support that person. But what he said a few days ago also, was that he will only support people who have not taken
party to court.
Again, that's very dangerous. Constitutionally, you're right if you feel aggrieved. In a rule of law country, to go to court. If I feel cheated, why can't I go to court? So, nitpicking that I'm not going to support somebody who has taken party to court is like saying, okay, if you have lost, regardless of whether you are cheated out, I don't care. But if you have lost, then suddenly you shouldn't, then the question is what happens to democracy? What happens to the constitutional right of that particular person?
Prof, if looking through, just listening to all of this, and there seems to be a certain thread, a narrative, because the world knows, former President Obama said it, that in Africa we have strong men, not institutions, as it were, and how you've traced it over time, and then even not this president, we've seen previous presidents, and how even within their parties, when they're feuding, a president can come in who they say is the leader of their party. If he takes a certain stance, everybody is supposed to be, you all align yourself, you shape up or you shape out, as it were. And in this case, aren't we, in a manner of speaking, playing the ostrich here? Because this is our reality. If a president says, I will allow free and fair elections, my elections is not worth this, so go out there and do certain things. Even look at within his party. Before the candidate merged, they tried to bring somebody else in the name of the president. And all of that leads to that position wielding all that power. Isn't that our own reality given our democracy or not?
Absolutely, you are right. Absolutely, yes. That is our reality. And there's no point in running away from that unless you just want to be a theoretician at the end of that has no reality to be. But look, I'm happy you mentioned the question of, building strong men in Africa, not strong institutions, which I think in your last segment of the interview you were referring to with the last speaker. That is one of the tragedies of the Nigerian political system. Even if we accept it today as a reality, we shouldn't. And we should start working, our way out of that. Look, let me go back to when Mandela was negotiating. When he was in prison in South Africa, when he was negotiating with the government representatives, I remember very well, the Minister for Justice then, Kobe Kotese was negotiating with him on behalf of the president and the Minister for Justice, and the two of them at that point in time. Now, something happened, if you remember. Mandela did not inform his colleagues in the prison. Didn't inform the ANC, because he was very worried that if he informed his colleagues, Sesulu and Co, in prison, that was going to be negotiating, they might shoot him down. But then he knew what he wanted to do. But what did he do? Very cleverly, when he met with the representative of the president, he said, I am not speaking for myself. I am doing this on behalf of my party. Point blank. So he made it clear that whatever he said at that point in time was still subject to the ratification of his party. That was very important. That was somebody at that point in time who had already spent 23 years in prison. Talk about party supremacy. We don't need to go too far. One of the best organized parties in Africa, or in Nigeria, I don't want to make a large claim, would be Unity Party of Nigeria under Awolowo. Because there was cohesion, there was party supremacy. Although no question that the leader of the party, Chief Awolowo, loomed large, but notwithstanding, there was a very strong cohesion within the party. I'm sure, we have PRP too with Malam Aminu Kano. And
that's not to say it didn't happen with the National Party of Nigeria as well, even though the national chairman of the party seemed overbearing at the time.
But I agree with you. I didn't mention MPN for some reasons, basically, because I'm not talking about the second best. I was looking at examples of some of the finest that we have had in the continent and the country. I don't want to go too large in the continent. So, but today, you don't really have that. What you have today is a complete and utter chaos and total mess of political parties in Nigeria. And I don't care whether you're PA, whether you're APC, PDP, Labour Party, or RIP, whatever you call yourself. It's utter chaos in which they only look towards what the president wants.
The question then is, where did we lose that?
Well,
because, what you're saying now, as critical as it is, even go back to that same First Republic that you talked about. That First Republic produced a vibrant, mutual competition, how do we get, healthy competition among the different regions, which were governed by different political parties, as you would say. So at what point did we lose? You talked about this party supremacy, even in the Second Republic. I think the same thing reflected in the Third Republic, because you couldn't even do anything without the national chairman of the party saying. So at what point did we lose this party supremacy thing?
Well, Ayo, straight away, number one, it's a functionality of the party system that you operate. In the First Republic, we had a parliamentary system. And one of the hallmarks of parliamentary system is a vibrant, legislature. That you have debate, you have official opposition party. You have debate, you have everything.
You also have something you're offering to people.
Precisely. You have prime minister, and you have so there will be a lot of debate. And you enjoyed some of the finest debates of our life in the 60s. But by the time we, transmogrified into what we call, presidential system in the 79, then we lost it completely. But then you have a chief executive in power, basically. So it's no longer a question of bottom up, it's now top down. It speaks to people. Today, look, governors are just like Boy Scouts, they're just like kids in Nigeria. But they're just like, I don't know, it's like a principal talking to school children, or a headmaster talking to school children in Nigeria. It's a fact, whether we like it or not. You have a system in which, look, some of them are very unsettling. I'll give you an example. I remember when Lekki crisis happened, was it a couple of years ago now? One of the most painful aspects, and I'm not saying whether 1 billion people were killed or not, there was tragedy in Lagos at that point in time. The president didn't come to Lagos. Why should I, as a governor of Lagos, now take the photograph of what happened in Lagos to go and meet Mr. President in Abuja? Doesn't have television? Are there no television in the State House for him to see that there was a crisis in Lagos? What is my business as a governor to go and be showing President album? Oh, Mr. President, in case you didn't see, these are the album of the crisis in Lagos State. So that shows you the level to which we have descended in our political system. So straight away to your question, it's a functionality of our political system. It's a functionality of the lack of strong institutions we are talking about. Look, we have mad people in politics, mad people in the United States. Look, Donald Trump is probably more mad than most Nigerian politicians. But one thing that is clear is that they have strong democratic institutions. So what happened to him a couple of weeks when people went to Lamago? And they took documents, classified documents, about 4 levels of classifications, that document that had no business being in the government. You can shout that you are being witch hunted. You can shout. But the truth is, the law is there. The law says, as a president, you cannot take certain levels of documentation into your house. And he did that. And for that, he has to go and face the music. That is law. That is rule of law. That is a country where democratic institutions work. But none of them is stronger probably today than Donald Trump himself. But the law is the strongest.
Several things come to mind. Culture. Does culture have a role to play in politics? Culture, they say, is a people's way of life. So where do the people come in all of this? We'll explore that and a lot more when we return in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are with Ademola Abbas, Professor of International Law and Global Affairs Expert. You know, when we talk about culture, you know, stemming from the governor of Lagos going to the president, many may look at it from that prism. But when they say that all of these scenarios playing out cannot be devoid or in isolation of a people's way of life, that it has to reflect either in a politicking, in law, whatever it is. But it was the people that also participated in 1993, the way the political system went at the time. And then it was the same people who were there too in the second, third, first republics, and the way things played out in that parliamentary system, it was the same people. And now people are still there playing their roles. So where do the people come in here? What role do we play? Because if these things are happening where we have strong men and not institutions, could it be that we, the people, have a question to answer?
That's a very loaded question, because I think you've hit the nail on the head. Look, if you go back to the 60s, I earlier spoke about party structure. The political system, the party system we operated, it was a far more inclusive system in terms of representation. So people began to witness and watch on television, through transistor radio, politicians debate issues. People were engaged. You remember the wet year crisis. You know, government would take a decision, people would say, no, we don't agree with it, because there would be an articulation of that decision. You know, because government parties at that point in time, they had entrenched policies, and they were able to actually communicate to their people. They took the ideas to the people. They debated with the people. They pushed the ideas. And on every aspect, whether you are AG, you are MPC, you are NCNC, whatever you are, there was proper articulation. There was connection with people. Fast forward, then we had the coup in 1966. Then we had the counter coup. Then we had the beginning of military regime. Now, those who grew from the 60s down to about 79, that after that short time, and down to 80s and early 90s, they never witnessed a culture of debate. And that was, if you check Nigerians' temperament, the temperament of an average Nigerian between 1960 and 1966 is radically different from 1970 onward. Because in the 60s, we were debating. So our parents were more cultured. They talked to you in a very civilized manner, you know, and so on and so forth. But because you and I don't know, I am in my early 50s now. Those who were born late 69, late 60s, you know, towards the end and early 70s, we never witnessed that. You wake up in the morning and what you see is that somebody decreed that. So there was our culture of civility began to wane. So what you then had was militocracy. I decree, I did this, fierceness, and, you know, boots on the street. And that began to emasculate the people's psychology. We became traumatized because suddenly we didn't see the military as people who defend their nation. We see them as embodiments of oppression on the street. Because if there's a crisis, when you send soldiers there, even till Nigeria today, if you send a police contingent, people just want to send a soldier. It's a different thing entirely. So people have been consistently brutalized, you know, politically. So in terms of political culture, we have dwindled a lot. Then combine economy with it. Up until 10, 15 years ago, Nigerians didn't struggle for bread. We didn't struggle so much for, even though there was austerity, there would be debate. Should we take SAP? Shouldn't we take SAP? And this and that. People were still engaged with their political structures. But in the last 15, 20 years, everything has gone has gone bananas at the end of the day. So the culture has brutalized the people. The people have become completely weakened now to the extent that they just look at politicians as their only means of survival.
So you don't think that, sorry, Bukola, so you don't think that the National Assembly, the debates at the National Assembly carry any such similarity or semblance of the debates you are talking about?
The answer is absolutely not. Totally not. Because, look, I don't want to sound very irrational here, but the truth is, when I look at National Assembly, and I don't mean to be insulting to anybody, I just remember the guy Fordo's poem long ago when he called it, he used the term cabinet of fluke for a particular government. And you begin to talk about an assembly of flukes, I'm sorry to say. Because how can you be in a country and you call yourself legislators, whether you are in the House of Rep or you are in the Senate, and you are in a country in which you have human beings hijacked, kidnapped, just because you are in a train, and it's as if nothing has happened to the country. You have people in Sambisa Forest as if nothing has happened to the country. What kind of laws are you making? What kind of laws are you making that the Accountant General of the country is rumored or alleged to have stolen between 80 or 100 billion naira, and you are sitting there quietly? The only reason you are sitting is because as a senator you are taking 36 million naira every month from the coffers of the country.
So based on this critical loss of value from the 60s and 70s to this current generation now, how should we begin to interrogate the candidates who are positioning themselves, to take leadership positions in 2023?
Fantastic question. Look, and that's why I began by saying earlier on that saying that you want to respect, one of the things that Mr. Buhari said was that, we want Nigerians to know that we respect them, and we will show that in the next 6 months. Number one, you don't need to tell me that I respect you. If I respect you, or if you respect me, I will see that you respect me. So I'm sorry, Mr. President got it fatally wrong, that you want Nigerians to know that you respect them. No, you don't respect Nigerians. If you respect Nigerians, you won't lock their children out of universities for 7 months when your children are graduating in foreign lands. If you respect Nigerians, you will not owe foreign airlines, which ordinary Nigerians use, not private jets that you and your cohort use, only for the CBN governor to wake up one day and insult our intelligence by releasing half of the money they wrongly held anyway, and telling the nation that, we were trying to organize an orderly exit of what is that nonsense, orderly exit of fund. You owe somebody, you pay them. You don't wait until they start forcing your people to go and take flight from Benin Republic, from Togo, from Ghana, to go overseas, for goodness sake. And you say you respect Nigerians. No, sorry, you don't show that you respect me by just allowing me to vote for who I want to vote for. And by the way, Mr. President is saying that Nigerians will know and they will appreciate us in the next 6 months. You've been there for 80 years almost. So you are waiting for the last 6 months for me to appreciate that you've been there for the last 8 years. So all this kind of thing is, you just have to put that at the back of our mind. But now back to your question, when you have that at the back of your mind, how do we begin to engage? Who do we look for? That's why I said that it's already a fait accompli. Because maybe if they have controlled, if they have criminalized vote buying heavily, if they have heavily sanctioned it, if they have lowered how much you need to pay to pick forms, maybe you'll have had much better candidates coming out. So now allowing a bunch of people we might not really want, I'm just saying generally, to now go to the poll and now emerge, and you're not saying you're going to control, it's a fait accompli already. So what I'm saying, at that point in time, then what can we do? Well, we just have to make the best out of the evils that we have at the end of the day. So you have to be looking for who looks for your best interest. When I was coming this morning, I think Mr. Peter Obi was saying that something like he went on a tour of studying energy, and he said something important that if he didn't solve it within the party, that he would step down. I hope that if he wins, or whoever wins, whoever made that kind of pledge, if the person doesn't step down, they should force the person out. Because in this same government, why I didn't buy too much. In this same country, somebody said before, it's the same serving minister today. Even the serving president once said that if you cannot solve a problem within 5 months, you have 5 years. All this kind of gibberish. People say what they wanted to say. We've seen a politician who said that during our own government, students will spend 4 years in school. 4 years is becoming 6 years at the end of the day. So it's difficult to hold Nigerian politicians to book. So, and it leaves people with very little that they can do. But notwithstanding, get your PVC, go out and do whatever investigation, whatever study you will do to make sure that whoever you are voting for will be at least somebody that has a semblance of what you hope to achieve in your lifetime.
There are different dynamics that will play out in these elections, that are entirely new, that we've not experienced. I mean, they call it movement of what's going on. Lots of young people on the social media getting their voices heard. Many think that when the chips are down, they will also come out there and vote. Many also hope that that will happen. And then you have the scenario where you have different candidates from different parties who seem to be enjoying this momentum going into election. They say, look, we haven't seen this in a while. We don't know how this will pan out. Will there be a second ballot or not? Then you have the biometric voter accreditation system by INEC, which they're also going to introduce for the general election, not off-cycle election. So several factors, ingredients in this equation that we can't exactly say how this will play out at the moment. After all, they tell you 24 hours in politics is a long time, let alone 5-6 months. So as much as you want people to get their PVCs, we don't know what will happen.
Let me respond to those three things very quickly. Number one, starting with the youth. We're having record numbers of registration and youth interest in politics. But I'm just praying, and we have said that on this program so many times, I'm just hoping that time there'll be no ASU strike, or suddenly, because ASU strike is continuing now. Imagine if this goes on now for the next 3, 4, 5 months, and suddenly, when election comes around, you release students back to the schools. You disenfranchise them. Because somebody who's studying in Anambra or in Enugu, who is registered in Lagos, is not going to leave school, having missed 9 months or 10 months, just to come and vote. At that point in time, their focus will be, just let me finish before they go on strike again. And because the strike will happen again, at that point in time, you will disenfranchise the same youths that are struggling today. And that is where ASU has to be strategic. ASU has a critical role to play in 2023 dispensation. And that is how it conducts its strike, that it will conduct, unfortunately, in terms of enfranchising students. That's number one.
Wouldn't that be manipulative?
It's not manipulative at all. That's not manipulative. It's saying that, look, you've been on this battle for a long time.
Yeah.
Myself, I'm sure you said you went through ASU strikes and that. It's going to go. But we may just have an opportunity now in our lifetime to say, you know what? If we vote in a right candidate, and I'm not nominating any particular candidate, we might just be able to get to cross this particular Rubicon eventually. So if strategically you think, you know what, I can see students registering massively. If I continue this strike for the next 4 or 5 months, they might not be able to actually cast their vote. If I'm saying, you know what, let me take a backseat for now and allow things to run, that is not manipulative, that's being strategic. That's number one. Number two, you talk about beavers. Fantastic idea. Beavers is, if you remember very well, Articles 30 and Article 38, brilliant of the guidelines itself. Article 30 talks about no telephone in polling booth and this and that, which is okay, so that people are no longer intimidated in that sense that, you're going to take what you're voting for. I voted for you, I've collected your money. They are stopping that.
There's a new strategy, though.
Precisely, there's a new strategy, so we hope that is going to be. But we've seen some semblance of it in Osun, Ekiti, and I think Anambra, and so I think to that extent, we can be marginally, I'd say marginally and cautiously hopeful. And I'm hoping also that there will be no BBN, Big Brother Nigeria, during the voting time, because that sucks the interest of the youth like nothing else. Whenever that thing comes on, you'll forget their BVC, so I think they have to go and work on that. But on a more serious note, is the fact that at least we have an opportunity now, and I agree with you, Chamberlain, on that. I've almost become pessimistic about the electoral cycles in Nigeria, because there's too much noise, too much hot air and this and that, and everything just comes crashing again. Politicians will come and make many promises and they will never fulfill. But something tells me that 2023 might just be slightly different from what we've ever witnessed. If not by the record of number of youth, and I'm hoping they are going to translate that into actual voting, not just being on social media.
Yeah.
But at least also because it seems that the country has got to a state now that we are at a tipping point, that we are telling ourselves, look, if we don't do this one right now, we might just go into places.
To add to the president's position that he's going to be allow every vote to count, can we demand that is seen in the conduct of delegated authority who are going to participate in the coming elections? And what questions, what are your expectations to see the reflection of that, the president's position in the conduct of delegated authority, i.e. security agencies and INEC?
Well, thank you so much for that question, because when I was speaking earlier on, I did mention that, when the president talked about not allowing people to be intimidated, we have to look at those who are intimidating people in the past. If it's for you to say on the one hand, you don't want people, and he clarified it that he doesn't want people who have personal resources and this and that, maybe money bags and what have you. I don't know how they want to achieve that. But also we know that the other spectrum, which you've referred to, is the role being played by security agencies who are obviously used, and those are not personal resources, those are state resources. And the government itself, I'm not talking about Buhari's government per se, most governments in power have been guilty of that. We've seen cases in Nigeria in which governments in power actually forbade, or they made it impossible for certain candidates to go out on the voting day, including governors. And I know governors that were actually locked in their own government houses, that they couldn't go out to vote at that point in time. So we know all those. So we're hoping that the government will match its words with action when the time comes.
If I could just pick up on that for a bit, when hoping that will happen, but if we look at how certain things have happened, particularly with the president and his speeches and comments, we know that he's given the Riot Act to the army several times, shoot down these folks, put an end to insurgency, make sure this doesn't happen. But we don't get to see the requisite or commensurate action on the part of the armed forces. I stand corrected on that one. But we have also seen all those persons, some of them, his party men, come here and tell us, look, the style of the president is that if he gives you a task, he likes you to go ahead and finish. He trusts you. He gives you the free hand to operate. I mean, I think this is one of the recent governments where we haven't seen ministerial change like 2 or 3 times in recent times, attesting to his style. So if we say, wait a minute, so should he then breathe on the neck of those people? Isn't that going to be holding our breath for far too long?
Well, you see, let me start with the fact that he hasn't made a lot of changes in the ministerial positions. We cannot assume that was because that was down to his
trusting them.
Is trusting them, or look, in politics, you talk about interests. Basically, it depends on where his interest lies. That's because he actually changed a couple of ministers, as you know. But look, all that be, you're absolutely right. The president might say, okay, his style might be, I give you a job, go and do it. But then we woke up, was it this morning? I think this morning or yesterday, when Governor Autumn came out and said that when he was talking to some security operatives, they said, the federal government said we should not kill terrorists. We should not go after them. So, now, the federal government has not come out to deny that allegation. That's coming from a sitting governor, by the way, in this country. And I don't know if Governor Autumn will make such a light.
I'm not sure if it's the same one that Mr. Gabasho responded to, where he says that, if the governor was that forthright and bold, he should name the names of the military persons or whoever
I haven't read
told him that.
I haven't read that, Chamberlain. But if I read that, I would have said, when the same government itself said that they knew the names of those who are supporting terrorists. Have they published the names? So that is crappy. They shouldn't tell us that. But I've not read that. Anyway, whether you are Gabasho or they say whatever they want to say. But what is important is for the governor to say, to straight away indict the federal government and say, I was told by people that you sent that we should not engage terrorists. So what I'm saying is that it is all too easy. The president might come out and say one thing. The question is maybe not him saying another thing entirely. The question is what do his aides? What do they do with that? What information do they? It's not. Look, back to your question earlier on. I've always said we seem to be looking for an angel for president. When you look at the candidates parading themselves today, no. I've always asked myself, for me, the golden test is, who do I want to govern me from 2023? It doesn't have to be the best, but it has to be somebody who can bring together the best resources of this country, the best talents of this country, and harness them. The president is somebody who gives directives. He can't do everything, or she can't do everything by himself or by herself. But you must be able to appoint the best ministers. Who of them can identify the best talents in our country? That's number one. Number two, when political pressures come, and they will come to the president, who of them has enough capacity to withstand that? Because that is where everything falls apart in Nigeria.
Wouldn't you say we are over-centralizing the issues? Many times when we're looking at these issues, we're looking at the president. We're looking at the federal government. You said that earlier that the governors are like kids, something like that. But they have
PDP chairman.
I tried not to make that reference, Chamberlain. But it's critical to look at that sector as well. Because I have said this before, you may validate it. The president doesn't have indigents. He has citizens. And citizens are the indigents that live in the different states and residents and all of that. So in my head, I'm wondering, what should we be looking at that level as well? There's so much power with the president, and that's understandable. But that's not to say that the governors are completely powerless themselves. So going back to Chamberlain's inquisition the other time about what the citizens need to do, just where do we go from there?
Ayo, straight away. We talked about the role of legislatures. We keep forgetting one thing. The parliament of any country is the most democratic of all the organs of government. Parliamentarians are the only ones that are directly elected in Nigeria. And they are accountable to the people, apart from the governor, who is the chief executive of the state. You don't elect ministers, they are appointed. You don't elect commissioners, they are appointed. You only appoint the governor and the deputy, the president and his vice. But all members of parliament are elected by the people. So they are responsible to the people. So when you talk about what can people do, people themselves, Nigerians cannot do anything except through their parliamentarians. And falling short of that, then you look towards the civil society organizations, the CSOs, when they are not busy chasing dollars and whatsoever from foreign donors and stuff like that. That is the point. In those days, CSOs will fight for the people when the government failed people. But today, what do CSOs do anyway? Look, just like nuns.
Let me quickly get this one in, and it's in relation to Ayo's question. There are many political commentators who have said, look, things as they are presently constituted cannot work. Even if you gave Nigeria to the Pope would not be able to revive this sleeping giant. Which of the candidates, on parade has that political will to implement the all-important restructuring that commentators believe is the silver bullet to bring Nigeria out of the doldrums?
The straight answer is all of them have it, none of them has it. In other words, all of them have it if they have something to work with. Look, they're not all idiots, make no mistake. Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu had been senator in this country, had been governor of Lagos State, had been a leader of APC. Mr. Atiku had been vice president of Nigeria, he was in custom, Mr. Obi had been governor of Anambra. They all have their pedigrees, make no mistake about that. They all have their qualifications, academic or non-academic, political or non-political, they all have it. But I think when people say even if Pope comes in, it will fail, they're referring to the fact that if you do not have certain constitutional amendments, A, to whittle the powers of the president that we have today, B, to elevate the powers of the governor over certain issues, C, to make sure local governments function more effectively than just outposts of the federal and the state government today. If you don't have all those things in place, it doesn't matter who you bring in. It will fail. It's just like when we're talking about corruption, when Babangida was there, Chibola, your blessed memory, said something important. He said, if you leave God with IBB for 5 minutes, he will corrupt him. And I never forget that. All Bolagi was saying at that point in time was that IBB's government was so corrupt that without having the political will to fight that corruption, it doesn't matter who you made the sire of corruption at that point in time in Nigeria. So all the candidates for me, none of them is evil, and none of them also is a saint. But the question is, if any of them comes in, what are they going to work with? Is that the constitution that is effective, that is going to guarantee equity and fairness for all Nigerians? Is that in place? Is that constitutional provisions that will whittle down the power of the president and stop making governors behave like kindergartens? Those are things that we need.
Well, interesting. We need to go. But on a lighter note, Buki, I keep wondering when they say give it to the Pope first. Let's see what he will do. They can say if you give it to the Pope.
Forget that the Pope has a system.
What's wrong with people? If you give it to give him first. Let's see what he'll do with it. And we'll take it from there when we give it to him.
The consequences of that.
Adebola Abbas, the professor of international law and the global affairs expert. Always a pleasure to have you on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we'll have some messages coming through from you. Henry Okeke, yours is the first. You are talking about 2023 elections. You say, as we move closer to 2023, it is time to look beyond campaign slogans and party inclinations. Now the question is, What is in it for Nigerians?
Good question.
To make 2023 election count, the people must scrutinize all political party candidates and their manifestos. This is more important than bags of rice, cash, and other buying capers. Well,
Vote buying capers.
Vote buying capers? I think it's relative, if you ask me.
Well, perspectives. This one is from Criss talking about electing effective and credible leaders. If only there will be tight security at polling units to stop thugs from disrupting voting, the 2023 election will spring surprises. I bet you that if that election is allowed to be free and fair, we will have a new Nigeria. Some of these people parading as politicians will be retired. May God help Nigeria.
And Musa Mohammed has this to say: the only thing Prof left out is, if we can lower the package and salaries of politicians in public office, a lot of them will not be interested in politics and the right people will emerge. And let me quickly take this one from Law Alpha Cross. He says, no matter how good and star-studded a team is, they sometimes lose matches. This is the lesson some heavyweights in the PDP should understand to think of victory in 2023, all things being equal.
Well, it's only Arsenal who went unbeaten in the Premier League that won. They didn't lose any match and they won the Premier League. But these days, you lose matches and you win the league. No matter.
Well,
you have the explanation
just
to that.
It's perspectives. Don't forget, that's football. Play on the field.
All right, so there you go. That is the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a brilliant day.
Thank you very much for sharing your day with us. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Bye for now.